Welcome to M365 UK. This is our May edition, and so it's been a while since we've been here. I think the last user group session we had was around, I think, back in February. Tend to do it as much as I can on a monthly basis, but obviously with workloads and everything else permitting, try my best. So hopefully I try and bring this at least bi-monthly basis, if not monthly, if I can. So. Just want to say a big welcome to our speakers. We got Vanessa Toves, we got Ejaz Hussain, and of course we'll have Karl-Johan Spiik joining us in a couple of hours. He's from Finland. So my warm welcome to all of you. And so we've got brilliant sessions today. In fact, I think I say new speakers. I don't like the term new speakers so much because we always speak in some ways and somewhere else. But nevertheless, at M365 UK, certainly, we are new speakers. So welcome to you definitely on that. Great content we have. So as much as we focus everything about Microsoft 365, so we got sessions around how to go about using your data-driven solutions to be able to architect your Microsoft 365 solutions with common problems using everyday apps in Microsoft 365. So that will be from Vanessa. Then we have a session around the making use of your enterprise data, not just data inside Microsoft 365, but any data that's outside of that, and really harness the power of Copilot really, and then being able to generate lots of kind of experiences around that. So be able to tap into that data. So that will be the session from Ejaz after this. And then obviously final session we'll have from Karl-Johan Spiik will be around mainly in the Power Platform stack, but still very much working with Microsoft 365 to be able to at least being able to handle and manage requests using Power Automate and being able to bring it in Azure DevOps, so that at least we are efficient in managing our communications and managing our workloads. So some great kind of use cases there around using the tech. So slightly extended than normal session that we normally have. So 3 hours. So local time 5 p.m. We got a break just in about a couple of hours, but I'm hoping that's not going to tire you all out because we're going to have great content to at least stay us interested with. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Chirag Patel. I am the organizer and the host for the M365 UK. Kind of worked with SQL Server over the years, 20 years ago in fact, and then kind of worked with SharePoint. Stepped into Office 365 back in 2012 and worked in a variety of sectors. So mainly I work in the IT pro capacity as well as a solution architect, but I'm also a certified trainer and I also deliver courses for various partners in the UK as well as my own courses. So it's kind of a mixed bag for me as a consultant to be able to deliver on various technology services on Microsoft 365 and being able to speak about it, share the experiences at various conferences and tend to various venues around the world as well. So techchirag.com is the best way to get to me for any support that I can provide you with, or even simply even coming to M365 UK. M365 UK has been running for almost 4 years now. In fact, next year next month will be 4 years. So thank you for following that. And obviously, those are the kind of some of the links we have. So LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and as ever, these sessions are recorded. So I'll try my best to get it up onto YouTube in a few days' time, so that you can at least visit back onto the content that you may have missed as well. So slides, if we get the slides, then obviously I'll try to upload those as well from the speakers, so that at least for your reference you can get to them as well. Sessionize.com /M365UK. So, go ahead, be like Vanessa and Ejaz. They submitted their sessions. So you're welcome to, provide your own perspective of how you use the technologies. It doesn't have to be full hour, 50 minutes. If you want to do it for half an hour, that's fine too. Just get in touch with me, and then happy to even support you if you're even a brand new speaker. So I really encourage you to come forward and at least share your experience. So would love to learn from you on that. Okay, so kind of just gives me a time to really to welcome Vanessa. As I mentioned earlier, Vanessa's from tuning in from US, and obviously been around with the tech for a long time. And when I saw the session abstract from Vanessa, I thought it kind of summarizes her profile in the sense that wanted to be an architect when you were a young person, and then here you are, you're architect, but obviously in a great space of the Microsoft tech and solutions as a solution architect. So without further ado, Vanessa, take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just going to kind of prep a couple of, I just lost my screen here. Prep a couple of things here. And
yeah.
So while I'm doing that, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. So I've been working with Microsoft technologies for, I can't even think now, since the very first version of SharePoint, and actually, really since SQL Server 6.5. That was my first entry. The first half of my career was a BI, so the business intelligence, SSRS, SSAS, the data warehousing, and SharePoint, absolutely. And then as SharePoint kind of took hold, or started to, I was able to I think I got my first job in SharePoint in 2004, something like that. But I've worked on it, for a while. So I love the technology. I've followed that progress of Microsoft's, both their BI suite as well as the collaboration stuff from the on-prem world all up into 365. So, and it's great. I mean, we were just talking beforehand just about how much as Microsoft has kind of progressed. I feel like I, had a second career, second little. So I love it. I love what I do. I love the technology of it. And because of that, over the years, what I've found about solutions and as I got to a point where, maybe 10 years ago, where I was like, okay, you know what? I'm a solutions architect right now. And that's the job title I want. And I deserve that because of the history of everything that I've done. And so I kept that title regardless of what I was hired at. I was always very proud of that. So I think that there's so much to being a solutions architect. But for me, I think I kind of love how the bigger Microsoft gets, the more opportunity I have, right? So today I work for a company called Druva Data Protection. And I moved to Druva about 3.5 years ago, and it was my first step away from like the everyday architecture, just having to work with clients and customers all the time. And because I kind of felt compelled based upon what I was seeing, more of on the back end. So I feel like my path now has stepped more towards the data protection and then security. So just going around in that world, and I can sit and have those conversations every day with the largest global banking companies, right, to the smallest companies, and even still help have those security-based conversations just because of the nature of the background that I have, and just that. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak, and I really recommend to anyone, whether you've presented before or shared a topic, you have knowledge. I didn't gain my knowledge by just automatically doing it this way. And so even in the content that you're going to hear today on the three different speakers, you might find the one or two things that really resonate with you that you want to go try and apply, and then you might make that your own. And as you begin to really adopt whatever it is, right? If it's security or solution architecture or data, share that knowledge, because others are where you are today, and you want them to, take different steps than you, to not maybe have the same pain points that you've had. So I am going to, first of all, I'm going to shut off my camera here so I don't lose my bandwidth, or I don't freeze. Right? There's nothing worse than freezing, and you have a horrible look on your face. So, all right. So let's talk about solution architecture, end-to-end solution. This is really just high level. There's a lot more questions that you have to ask yourself before you start to before you take that first step towards any type of application or code. And I think the biggest one, which I probably should have listed in here, is you have to be a really good listener. That means you need to listen, and then you have to also ask questions. Because the more you do that, the better off the solution or the problem is that you're solving. You give it the best chance, right? There's nothing worse than for you and for potentially the customer that you're working with, whether it's, when I say customer, it could be a customer internally, right, another department, or a customer externally, is that as they're speaking, you're designing a solution, and that's going to bite you, and that will bite them, or you're going to have to do a lot of rework. So the more questions you can ask beforehand and prepare, we're going to kind of delve into some of these questions, and I'll really reference some of these questions too as we look at kind of a demo. From, if I were to really highlight just a couple of these top ones that I don't have slides for, you have to think too about the license constraints, right? With 365 and how Microsoft has really changed their licensing model, right? They've adjusted it, and they really are trying to get at every single dollar per user, per month, per whatever. You need to know what you're developing in, and what constraints that you might pose to an entire organization by developing a solution in a certain way. And that you, as a developer, or even as a global admin, if you are that, you see different things than what an average user is, right? So we'll jump into this. We'll talk more about these questions, but here's a few slides. We only have a handful of slides, and then we'll jump into the solution. First of all, is like, you have to really be realistic about, I think this is what is the expected life? Oh, I must have flipped these. Oh, look here. I think this is a better one. There we go. What's the life of this solution? Right? Is it a short-term fix? Is it a long-term fix? Is it part of a project, a program? Is it part of an application lifecycle? Is it only going to work as long as you're there? Every one of these answers really results in some kind of different preparation, different architecture, different level of integration, or manual versus dynamic. Right? So these are some foundational things about how long will I be solving this problem for with this solution. So I'll give you a good example. I don't know, maybe about 3 months ago, I got, there's two, right? I got a call from an old client of mine. I mean, I haven't talked to these guys in years. And they reached out to me and they said, hey, you were the consultant on this legal contracts SharePoint site. We see your name all over it, which I love, in years. And we need to make a change to this, and we need to add these fields to this other data. And then we want it added to the dashboard. You've got this other dashboard. And I said, oh, we just don't know what's involved with all of this. And I said, oh, go to the SharePoint site. And back then there was no Teams, right? I mean, they weren't using Teams in that. They were a Google shop. And so I made a SharePoint site, and I was like, okay, go to SharePoint admin and search for M_, and then tell me what you see, because we weren't on a Zoom call. And he's like, oh, I see like 5 of them. So what I did was I also documented my solutions. And I'm like, oh, okay, so, this is go to this particular site and then tell me what you see, right? So we went through this whole thing, and he found out where the source of the dashboard files, where the report files were, like where everything was stored, what accounts, anything like that. That's what they needed to add to the one dashboard. And then, of course, they just needed to be added to a particular security group on the back end of the Azure side. And that was it. That solution has been running. And I was not surprised, but it's been running for several years without hiccup, without issues. And that comes with being prepared, right? Preparing yourself, like asking questions. Who is going to interact with the solution? Who are the audiences, right? Is it for all employees? Is it for full-time employees? Is it for just corporate? Is it for anyone in the UK? Is it for external employees? So these are part of the things that you have to consider, because if you consider who is going to deal with it, you then can turn around and understand the main actions that are going to be taken. This has nothing to do necessarily with the technology at this point, right? We need to know, right? Generally, what you're doing is you're replacing a business process when you're building a solution. Maybe someone had an external application, or they have an internal custom application that was super nasty and they just want to upgrade it. So you need to define and understand those roles and the actions that each one of those roles can do. And then you have to then turn around and look to where those roles play into the current process. So I like Visio. I like swim lanes. Those are great because swim lanes, I could sit these swim lanes in front of a customer. After I would have my first, usually I do requirements, sometimes, I'd have to spend a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, depending on how big the solutions were, or how big the problems were. And then I would build these swim lanes out to identify this is the current state, right? Current state is important for you. You can't just design for new state. So current state documentation of this role needs to do this thing and needs to have this level of, needs to have this notification, or it needs to have a yes or no, or whatever that is. That's the current state. Even if this documentation is for a manual process, right? And that manual thing is some files started via an email, some process starts via an email from a request. And then that person, right, that analyst takes that data and then puts it into this spreadsheet. And then they do X, Y, and Z, and then they send out this information. And every one of those things, what you need to understand is that transition of role and the transitions of actions. So once you have the current state, you're immediately able to then begin to kind of align your own thought process to how that might shift, right? How the audiences and how that's going to translate. Not necessarily designing a new flow, because I think this is still too early, right? Doing the requirements. What you're saying here is, I've heard you, and is this right? And the more you can make that documentation visual for a customer, the better off you can be. I use actually a tool called MindJet. It's a mind mapping tool. I've used that since college, the very first couple of years, way too many years ago. And I still use that today. I still have my old license, and I'm like, I'm going to use that. That still works. It's a very visual tool. And when I'm trying to determine and break down the information, right, this becomes very valuable, because then the more you're doing this, and as you begin to step towards the development or the architecture of what you're going to build, you can say, no, this is what you said. And also, I have documentation of you and the entire team agreeing to this, right? And they can visually see this, and they can also visually say, yes, no, or there's one more step. Right? So visualize the requirements, the process, and then understand too that not all steps that you might take have to be dynamically done. It just depends. Part of it depends on, I'll tell you, whenever you deal with a customer that has ADP or even Workday, and there's some kind of user integration or user step in there, right? Something has to occur, then they get information back. You can either take a solution that could have been 6 steps and it's open and closed within, maybe 30 minutes, to a fully integrated system that now has to have some ETL, and has to have some custom code, and it also has to have this integration, and you also had to buy these API licenses, and you had like not only time, but the impact of cost. So look at every one of the steps in the process and try and figure out what is natural for you to be able to solve within the confines of your budget to write your license. But if it will impact, right, if that's step number 3, which is to go get the birthday, because for the love of Pete, they don't want to integrate that back into their Azure or down into their, it's just, sometimes it's right. You have constraints that you're like, oh, you have this data, and where are you starting? Where does this data start from? And then it pushes out to these third parties like ADP and or Workday, and that's where they're managing it. They're not managing it in Azure or Entra, right? So understand, the impacts of possible steps, right? We'll talk more about that. The other thing is the data, the schema, right? I call it schema, the data, the metadata. You have data that you will build, that you will collect, and you need to kind of have a map about where you expect to source that data from, right? In solutions, and especially when we're dealing with inputs that start with end users, the more we can, the less we can ask them, the more chances they are to answer. Kind of funny. So you can't ask and have a survey of 20 questions and they're all required. Sometimes that's right, that becomes very painful. They can't answer all of those questions. So you have a mechanism, you need to map this out to say, okay, look, I literally had, this flow, that this process starts. It's 1, 2, 3, that's 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 questions were the source, right, from the end user that inputted the data. They gave me 8 pieces of data. And from that, I actually extended that data. I went from 8 to 32 in a dynamic nature. That means I'm able to open things up, and I can, absolutely, if I need to go and get my supervisor's region, I'm going to go use, Power Automate, and I'm going to grab that data and pull that data in. So knowing what your schema is, and I usually like to go backwards. One of my favorite things that engineers always dislike me for, just kidding, because I've dealt with data in the back end. I've dealt with data, big data from applications, right? They were sourced for web applications to databases to, any of that. And when you're building an application, one of the last things that's ever considered is the reporting, how that data is going to be used. So if you can start backwards and in those requirements of the type of reporting that you need, the analytics that you need, and if you can identify those and work backwards, what you'll find is that there will be a lot less work to do from a reporting and a BI perspective. And that you have standardized that data set all throughout the process, right? What I mean by that is, instead of getting and only having this amount of data and you stop at this line right here. You've got all of this. Someone wants to have a view that says, I need to pivot by this, pivot by that. I want to look at it by this, by that, right? Reporting is all about somewhat decision making. And how do you make decisions of revenue? Is it year over year, month over month, quarter over quarter? Right. So you want to look for and understand what these reports are going to give you to help you determine the type of data. So, like created date for us, date that information was submitted, date that it was approved, and all of those date features that you have, the dates that might be collected, because people want to say, I need to look at it, the duration between when they submitted it and when it was actually finally approved. And then, right, I want a duration, and I want to show that in a dashboard. So if you know that, if you've kind of gone down that path, then what you'll know is you'll be able to, whether you do calculated columns in SharePoint, which I totally still use, nothing wrong with that, or you build this out in your Power BI, but know the schema, know where that data is going to be used. Because if you have this awesome dashboard that you need to create and you're 99% way through the solution, and all of a sudden they say, oh yeah, I see this is created by, can we get this on submitted by? And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to go back in there and I have to put it back in here and then take that all the way through. Taking a few extra steps, especially around dates, I would just collect all the dates and store all the dates, because then you don't have to re-architect for that, right? So extend your data, add additional metadata from the processes that you have, right? The tools that you have. And then how are we going to communicate that? I think I might show that. And, these are things like, yes, I'm going to embed information in email. So you also need to know where that information is going to be used, because, right, defining that and creating the right schema for this, it's just going to help just understand like the model of data or information. And I mentioned this too, like, where will you get this information from? This will help, right? For me, I know that I can do some calculated columns maybe. And even in, the reason why I do calculated columns versus automatically using Power Automate to populate that, there could be various reasons why. Maybe I want to create a view, that is somewhat similar to the view of data that might be pulled out in the report. I'm going to get some data from the form. This one's coming in from the approval process, user profile, right? The actual process of someone interacting with that. This will help you to know this process probably a lot better than any one person that interacts with the entire thing. And of course, you have to understand what are you going to solve it with? If we live in the world of 365 and someone says, this is it, you've got an E3 and that's it. We're not going to buy any more licenses. We're not going to do that. It's a very hard line. Building solutions that are tied to elevated applications that are part of other licenses becomes very painful. And, I've been part of an audit. I had an old client call me up to say, hey, we're building this really great app. We're replacing this one that I was familiar with. And he's like, it seems to be taking a while. Can you just come in and just help me just understand what's happening? What are they doing? And it's because I've known them, I knew them for years and it's comfortable with me. I was like, sure, no problem. So what I found was that the solution, as awesome as it seemed to be like pretty dialed in. The engineer seemed to be really on top of it. He knew exactly what he's doing. The problem was he tied it to a license that they didn't have. And the cost of that license for the small company, right? It was small. It was like 450 people in the company. That every one of those people had to interact with that solution, which means they had to make a major upgrade to that license, or they had to re-architect that. So you must be aware of the implications of your decision of an application that you're going to use, right? This is also how creating a test user or users that represent all the different roles and testing that as early as possible, because you'll see that this user has an E3, right? Or has an E1, whatever the license is, and it tries to do a certain function that you've just communicated to it in email. And it goes there and it says, oh, you're not licensed for this. And you're like, oh, crap. Okay. So it's using some function. So we'll talk more about that too. Just a couple more slides here, and then we'll jump into kind of what this solution looks like. So document, oh man, it's the worst thing that everyone hates doing documentation. But if you can document throughout and you really embrace that, I promise you, and if you build a standard for yourself and your organization, it's going to only help you. Just like that one solution, right? I had another old customer call. We built this, this other kind of like a recognition, and they called and said, "Hey, this is not working." And I said, "Oh, go to the team that says M, me and my M underscore. That means manage. M underscore whatever the solution name was." And I said, "Go to this link that's up there in this one channel, and to the documentation link, and tell me what accounts are being used." I mean, I wasn't even on. And I said, "Now go see what's going on with that account. Go check that account." And one of their admins had deleted that account. They're like, "Oh, that's not even needed." And you're like, right, that was a processing account. And so if you document this stuff, even for you, as you begin, if you're working for a company or even a consulting company, and you work on something for 6 months, and then it's going great, and then a year later, you've worked on 5 other different projects, and then you have to come back into that one project, and you're like, what was it? What did I do? What was the one thing that I did? Right. So what works in there? What accounts? What's the process? All the documentation, the final documentation, right? That saves you more than anything. All right, we'll start this off looking at the solution by simple problem. The business problem is all about, right? There is, it's defining, and I kind of touched on that. Understanding who is involved, what is the pain point, what are you saving? Are you saving the company time? Are you saving them money? What's the gap between the manual process or even another process maybe coming out of another application, right? What's missing? And what's who's going to be involved in it? Who's going to approve it? So you need a statement that can help sell this, because sometimes bigger solutions require you to go to a steering committee, right? Or get approval, just depends on the company you work for. And you need to be able to relay that in one simple paragraph, right? So let's go and jump in and kind of take a look here, right? Let's see, I'm gonna bring this up here. So in this solution, it was simple, right? I've done employee recognition so many ways. Employee recognition, you can do it with an app. You can do it in a number of ways. You can use, but the biggest thing is about whether or not a process, that kind of recognition there's 2 types, right? There's formal and informal. So there's the informal of, yay, thank you so much, awesome job. And then there's the formal that might lead to some level of monetary, or a prize or something, right? Or an award. So you have to kind of think about the where you're going to share this information. And for me, once again, right, I manage information all within a site, so I can answer that. I might use this site, which is all about me. It's more internal to the team, and just kind of like proof out some of the things I need to present on this, right? To prototype. So in the solution that I'm dealing with, I've got just give you the model. I've got a form, right? And this form, let's refresh this. This form, by all means, is simple in terms of what you're doing, right? If you're dealing with forms, now forms are pretty straight. They've been around enough, but I really purposely like having forms that are specific. Like, so if I say it's an all-star award and I've got different choices there, I don't like running so many choices down in one question. So I sometimes make a little bit more work for myself, just by the nature of the experience that I want for the user. So all of this could have been in an award type or a category of award, and I could have put all these 20 options in there, but that's not how I want the data to align, right? So in the case of what I did in part of that schema was I had this award type, which then drove the different type of, and I'll go open up this, let me go open up this form. Let's see if I can move this. Oh, good Lord. All right, let me go to the form and I'll just show you some of that. Where is that? Not this one right here. Forms are, they are pretty straightforward, but even how you create these forms, like I said. So in my case, right, it's very simple, right? You're going to want to add some simple branching based on your choices. So what happens in this form is in my schema of my list and employee recognition, I only have one column that represents the award type or the whatever that secondary one was. Let me just go back. Award type, and then yes. Thing drives me crazy. I'm gonna have to move this down. 1 second. All right, so there's award type, and then the secondary column. Trying to find out where. I don't want to have too many of these tabs open, so let's just a world of tabs. All right, so let's see where that other column was called. So we've got the award type, and then I think it's called recognition. Yeah, recognition type. So in my list, I only have one column called recognition type. And it doesn't matter, right? What I know is whenever someone selects this, regardless of the fact that they are all different values, I'm going to eventually stuff this value all into the one column. And I'm going to do that with Power Automate. But I like to do this because I want questions to be specific, right? So, and if I'm being specific in my questions, it helps me to be relevant. Certain things, absolutely, that you have to prompt for, that you're going to have to do checks for, is if you have manual things like someone puts in an email. That's always fun. So you have options right there. You can do this with a form. You can turn around and do this with a Power App. You can even do this still with an old list, right? Just going straight to the list. The list is the least controllable. Power Apps is the most controllable. Part of it comes with your level of knowledge and your comfort level. Like there's not much that I couldn't do with a combination of a SharePoint list, a form, or a Power App, right? From an input perspective. The biggest thing is I've determined that in my solution, I'm storing all my data in this list. That's where I'm storing my data. So regardless of what, absolutely the form is going to serve as it's going to save the data in an Excel file. Awesome. But this is where I want to process. Right. I've done, I won't go down that path. Okay. So I've got my list. That's awesome. I've got the first part where I'm selecting that data. I'm making sure that I kind of ask questions. And, even though I might have created 4 different columns, in my list, I'm only going to store any one of those values in one column. I don't want to have 4 different values here. All right, so that's step 1, is determining where you're going to collect the data. Forms, super easy. And let me get rid of this. Let me see if there's anything else in this form that I've done that you might want to know. The other thing about forms simply is I align these values to on the back end of the list. Like if I know that the values that I'm putting in here for a choice, I want to make sure that I have that and store all those unique values as that list choice option, right? I sometimes go back and forth. If someone wants to create, and if I want to create for the user the ability to come in here and do something with a form, great. But if I'm testing, I may not want to test with this form. I might want to just go create a new item directly from the list itself. So you still want to drive those value options all down into, any one of these. So, okay, so that's form, that's the input. The second part is the flow, right? Flows, a lot of it, absolutely, these Power Automates. I still call them flows, even though it's Power Automate. And, right, it depends on how you want to process. I've done one big flow or 2 flows. I've also done multiple flows and step flows. So we'll talk about some of those things about the flow and what we're doing in this process, right? So the simple form response, I don't think there's anything major in here. I think I'm just dumping this into the list, right? So I know I'm really starting this process. I'm listening, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to dump it back into this list. Now, you have to kind of be careful of changes that you make on this form. So if you come in here and you've built this flow, and then you turn around and you're like, oh, Founders Award, I'm just going to make a new Founders Award. It's a different type. It's going to create in the Excel file and in the definition a completely different ID of that next value, right? So you have to go back in and remember, right, to modify these flows if you change that column. Otherwise, it'll break, right? You're going to break your flow. So this is where I did a bunch of things, in one option. Basically, I'm running through and remember that list of like that schema. All right, great. Here's the new response, get the details. And then I'm getting 2 sets of data. Now is where I'm starting to extend my data set, right? I know that when I submit, I'm going to do something and I'm going to get data about the nominee and the responder. And so this is where I'm able to build a data set of information no one was ever prompted for, if that makes sense to everyone, right? So great. And now I have both additional things for reporting, for email, for whatever it may be. So let's go back. And remember how I mentioned this in this form, where it was one award type, but then all of these, All-Star Award, Outstanding Achievement Award, Excellence Award, Founders Award, all of those are going to write into the same list column in my SharePoint list, but they're 4 different fields. So once again, this is all depending on how you want to do certain things in here, right? So I've got all the extra things that I'm getting and I'm going to extend my data set with. That's awesome. And then now I'm going to put in my little conditioner if it's equal to All-Star Award. And what I want to do in that All-Star Award is great. I'm going to go create that item. And now I'm going to go dump that item with the recognition type right here. And that's going to go to that specific value. I know that recognition type needs to be because it's the All-Star Award, right? So it's almost the exact same flow. Almost the exact same. It almost is the exact same flow. But as I'm stepping through this, now I'm going to go to Outstanding Achievement. Great. It's a different value. But one of the things I'm going to do in this one is I'm just going to use a very different value, right? I'm going to use the Outstanding. So the category value column, is now pointing to and pulling in, right, the outstanding. I've done variables before, where I define, I find out what type it is at the top, right, and grab that. But that, I just didn't want to make it too complicated in here. Believe me, I've made tons of complicated ones where I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, what did I do on that one? Why did I do that here? Right. So when you design anything, especially when you're dealing with Power Automate, Power Apps, but really Power Automate, is you have to kind of design for the person coming behind you. It needs to be somewhat easier to understand what a particular section is doing. If you're literally just running it straight down and not branching, or not even if you don't do much here other than it, you want to kind of as much document even in this flow, so that whether you come back in a year from now and you can easily look at this model and say, oh, okay, this is what happens. I'm going to do these things, because not only am I going to write that outstanding achievement value to the category, but down below, and I think that's over here is where I built it. Down below, I'm also going to send an email very specifically, and I'm going to embed that data. And I know I need to embed, so this is where those slices become very different. Part of it depends on, one, your knowledge level, your comfort level. If you plan on being at this company forever, kidding. And I've had to after about a year, 2 years, I've gone back in and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to change that. I learned X, Y, and Z. I learned how to do something better. So I'm going to make that flow a little less complicated, right? And I've done that a number of times as well. So the other thing I mentioned, right, and we talked about that in that, as part of this solution, is you want to communicate where people work, right? A process and a solution and information, and that's going through stages, especially. People don't work in SharePoint. And now I would say they probably, if a company has Teams, they probably have Teams up and open. But even then, email is still the primary. So if I can communicate to someone, and that's part of about having a successful solution, that as something is stepping through a process, you want to embed your data that you've collected, targeted towards this particular audience, whether the audience that we know, right? Maybe you have 3 different notifications of email in a process. One is the person that needs to act. Hey, I'm at this step, I'm going to wait for you to do this. Great. Then the next step, hey, thank you for this is where I'm notifying whoever the requester is. I want you to know that this is where we are. We get this all as consumers, as it is, right? In our own everyday life, we see that communication. And the worst part of communication that for me that I never liked was that, and I did this early in my career, right? I was a SharePoint person. So I was like, I want them to come to my SharePoint site. Everyone needs to be coming to that SharePoint site because it's, one, it's awesome. Two, I've spent so much time on it, right? But after a while, I'm like, you know what? I just want the process to win, and I want to communicate effectively. So I'm going to communicate with people where they work. If it's email, and they're going to see this email even on their mobile device, maybe they're at lunch. You know what's extremely important about an email and embedding this information? That's, one, not sensitive, too, right? Is because if someone looks at it and they need to act, they'll know who to go call. If they don't need to act and it's almost like, yeah, that's great. I'm glad that's where we are with that. Awesome. I don't need to do anything. It's reassuring as to the responsiveness of your architecture in this solution. And as you can see, right, I might start to have a combination of things that I'm embedding as I'm going through this. I've received it. This is step 1. I've received it. This is going out to the person who was recognized by. It's me saying, in this case, it could be, hey, we don't want that person to know that they're being nominated, right? That's part of it, is understanding that part of the flow that we originally defined, and then our transition into a dynamic flow. And if the request was, as part of the requirements was, okay, for this formal recognition, we want only the person that's being recognized to see the information. We do not want to notify the person that is being recognized. So you can become very detailed, both about what you present and then embed things so that if someone has a question, right? Well, they shouldn't. I mean, ultimately, right? If you can relay the step, I'm here, and this is where we are in this process. So yeah, designing this. The other thing I'll talk about is the account that runs this. And Power Automate today has more limitations to it than it did when it was first released. So you're going to have to understand, like, sometimes a customer or department head or whoever's asking for this solution, they want to be very specific about who an email is being sent from, right? They don't want, number one, I don't want to processes with my account, and I generally don't do that. I usually create an account that has, and it depends on how frequent these Power Automates are going to run, right? Right, the frequency of it. So you have to really kind of align that and understand the accounts and the license implications, and do some estimates of, okay, how many requests like this do you get a day? And so that's just the submittal. And then if I'm processing it, how many do I estimate, right, will actually run in a day? So you need to be very specific about how you're going to run this, right, with what type of account. The other thing about creating a service account or a process account is that it lives beyond you as a developer. Now, I might have shared this with me originally, but it's really this account that's running the process. And by doing that, if I leave, the process does not stop, right? So if you have a dozen Power Automates out there that are running, that are associated to processes, you really need to consider the management of that, right? And what happens when you leave the organization. So there's a few things. Now, I mentioned too kind of the steps in how you want to build this flow, whether you have one big one or you begin to break it out. What I also liked about breaking it out was when I didn't have to account for so many moving parts, and I would know quite easily if this particular, which ones actually failed. It just became so much easier. So just depends on how big the solution is and how many moving parts as to whether I embedded it in one or I broke it out right into this. But this becomes so much easier. If I'm seeing this running one, this flow that's running now, or it failed now, but it's interchanging with processes that have, there's 5 steps, 5 stages. And I'm like, at this point in time, don't know what part is errored, right? So I have to go in and do a lot of hunting versus, all right, I know that this particular thing is HR eligibility, and that's where the error is. So I get to kind of focus where I troubleshoot. All right, so let's just go in here. I think there's just a couple more things we'll focus on. And I think I have about 10 minutes. Is that about right? Just making sure.
Yeah, you got about 4 minutes, but that's fine. You can finish in 5 if that's all right.
Yeah. All right. So we'll just talk about a couple of these simple, right? The simple parts of the processes. Changing data and updating data and communicating goes both ways on success and failure, right? The success, if it succeeds, awesome. If it doesn't, all right, people still need to know about that. And this is where you definitely can build out and create those more customized and tailored notifications depending on who the responder, who it is that you're communicating with. The other thing I'd like to think about too is the things that I do that might help automate a process. So simple things like, all right, at the end of this recognition, I can take this and I can have someone manually go create a site page under the employee recognition site. But if it's gone through, well, I have all the data in here for me to basically automate requesting or creating a page on the fly. So if I can use the data throughout and make it less work, then that becomes a win, right? If basically what happens is that this whole process goes through and at the end of it, someone needs to take this data again and go manually do something. That's a step, right? That's a pause in that process. All right, the last thing I'll focus on in kind of that communication is, or let's see, let me just make sure I've got one other thing. I think it was in this one that I turned this one off. Let me just make sure. Yeah, I think this is that part too. Right? So in some requests, when you want to publish this data on an intranet, and let's say it doesn't matter what the data is. It could have been a knowledge article that you were collecting information on, could have been a separate process, but some part of it needs to go to a SharePoint page. You can do that within these processes, right? It's like, okay, after certain thing, we want to actually go in and then turn around and utilize our data that we've collected that we know has been approved, and then turn around and publish that back out as a site page. So whatever that may be, or publish it even into, right, out to a team, to a post, it doesn't really matter. But the automation aspect, it can go so deep, both with, the things that help people from like this whole process is all about maybe saving time. But at the same time too, we know that people, okay, I've got to train someone on how to create a site page, right? If I take 90% of that step for them and create that, push that data to it, right? That part also helps in terms of maintaining the promoting you're using other parts of the solution. All right, last thing I'll talk about in every solution is visualization. Right? So you've got this awesome solution. You've got 3 different audiences that need to look at data. And how are you going to do it? Right? Maybe you have an analyst that needs to, you're like, as an analyst, you're like, you know what? I've got built out this entire schema. Here, go export the data, keep it synced with an Excel file, go do whatever you want. Part of it depends on the knowledge of who has to interact with this. If it's something formal, and whether it's like a knowledge base or this employee recognition, and I'm doing something for like a leadership, I'm still, right, the process is running. This dashboard, I love Power BI. I was so happy when, they really made a good jump to be usable for customers, because I just opened up so many other things for me to build on. But there's no better promotion of your process than visualizing your process, right? And this is the part too about things like the word June. Nowhere did anyone need to have to input the name of June, but that's what I want to call it, or a particular concatenation of 2 different columns: All-Star Award Collaboration, Excellence Award, what Innovation, Founders Award Initiative. Right. So when you're doing the data visualization, and you can work backwards in like modeling how you want, like for the senior leadership, for the process owner, right? A senior leadership might just, maybe they just want something simple like this, whereas, right, you've got more in-depth. This is so boring and not really in-depth, but the concept being, what views do I need to look at to help me make decisions about this process? Is the process running? Is it doing, what's the SLA? Who's do we have too much work in this one particular area? Understand what answers the audience is going to try and gauge from this data in order for you to know what data you need to collect. And the more you can put that and build that onto this primary schema of where I'm storing this data, which is in a simple SharePoint list that no one ever goes to, by the way, no one works here, right? We're going to ingest this via, once I've collected it, I might take this next step and create a Power App. But this is like one of the, unfortunately, totally fine, right? I can say it. This is just not a great UI for someone to try and do something. So build the schema, make it valuable, ask the right questions, know what you're trying to solve for. A dashboard can drive adoption. Okay. All right. Enough of my solution. You guys feel free to ask any questions if you have any.
That's awesome, Vanessa. Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, like you touched on the nail. Really, it's the principles, isn't it? Than the actual technology that we work with to build with. So, yeah, great example of the concepts, the data there, and everything else you have to work with. Yeah, wonderful. I think, yeah, any questions for Vanessa, please fire away. We did get a good comment though. That's very cool. I think when you were demoing the employee recognition form by selecting the category and then the subsequent changes. So we have a like on that. But yeah, no, I think I mean
Small little things, right? Small little
it's
things
the
you
little
might
things
get.
that makes the difference. Absolutely, it is. I think, and also like you mentioned as well, because as much as we are skilled in these technologies, but it's the people who's going to use it afterwards to maintain that solution. And sometimes people don't use everything of M365 all the time, right? So
Right.
kind of creates a challenge as well, doesn't it, to be able to maintain.
Yeah. You know, it's like you have to almost you deal with, you know, when we were in the on-prem world, we used SharePoint Designer as our workaround tool to work around everything with that damn share and InfoPath. Here, now you're having to work around licensing constraints, even with something like knowing the frequency of how frequently someone is going to submit something, or like even a Power Automate is going to run. You're like, okay, so number one, I had to create the flow to do the thing. And then now I actually have to create a flow that goes and fakes run that flow so that it doesn't auto disable, right? Because of I want to kind of, I don't want to have a paid version of that license. So there's so many different ways of solving even the technology aspects of even like license limitations, right? So
it is,
yeah.
and that's what makes it exciting, right? So that's the good thing about what we do. So look, I think I live for the attendees for any questions they may have. I think yeah, just keep an eye on the chat, please.
Yeah.
If there is any questions around that. But yeah, I just want to say I'll put the link in the chat. So please do fill out. It's a very short feedback form. So it definitely help Vanessa out anyways. So yeah, please submit your feedback, and I appreciate that. And I think so. Let's go over to our next session. So we have Ejaz Hussain with us. Ejaz is our Microsoft 365 MVP. In fact, he's a new MVP in less than a year here. He obviously specializes in M365 development and Microsoft Graph technologies. So he's kind of a developer by heart, but certainly I think still very much solution-based consultant. So yeah, so his session is going to be about unleashing your business data by through the Copilot experiences in Microsoft 365, and really kind of just bringing your data from outside, ingesting into your tenant, using custom connectors for Microsoft Graph, and being able to then obviously have your experiences built around that, so you can at least use the power of the generative AI for your enterprise data. So very much looking forward to this now. So if you're all good, Ejaz, then over to you, and welcome to M365 UK.
Thank you, Chirag. I'm really honored to be here. So let me share my screen, and then we can kickstart the session. So guys, let me know when you guys can see my screen.
Yeah, you're all good. Thanks.
Good. That's good stuff. So so let me just open this code as well. Right. So hi everybody. My name is Ejaz, as Chirag said. My name is Ejaz. I'm recently been awarded a MVP award. This is my first year on this program, and I've been in the community since 2006, 2017, contributing and participating, but not to the extent where I was feeling like let's go for the MVP now, and it's so many inspiration in the community, and like Chirag and Noob and some of my other colleagues that work with, doing amazing work in the community. So I think these are the guys who I inspired initially, and then actually put more effort into it, and then gone for the MVP award. So there's really good journey there. So I'm a 365 developer and architect, and I work for a company called Advania UK. We're based in London. We as Advania, we are across the globe in different countries as well. But we we work for the Advania UK, the UK side. So here's my Twitter handle and the LinkedIn. Please get in touch if you have any question. Or you want a fancy chat about Microsoft 365, Graph, Copilot, just ping me and get in touch. Happy to help, happy to chat. So today we're going to look into how can you bring your Copilot. How can you bring your custom data sources, which are not in Microsoft 365 ecosystem, because Copilot only knows about the data sources which are already in the Microsoft 365 ecosystems, like your emails, or probably I would say the Graph knows about them. Microsoft Graph knows about them, like email, chat, messages. But that's all cool. But how about the the most of the business workflow doesn't work that way. They have a separate specialized applications and data. So how can we benefit of Copilot with our own data? So that's what we're going to look into it, and we can explore how custom graph connectors can help in that aspect. So we're going to look into, if you look in the agenda, we're going to look into briefly what's Copilot, just to remind if people have not, kind of know about the Copilot, what Copilot is, how, and we can look into the extensibility into the Copilot, what are the options available there, and also with the Microsoft Graph route as well in the extensibility, what types of Microsoft Graph connectors available, we can explore that. Then the licensing, again, we'll look into licensing and pricing as well, very important. And then we'll look into the connected experiences, where we can, after we ingested the data, what's the experience look like for the normal user, and what Copilot can do with our custom data. Then demo, and then we'll take you through the code implementation. If you're interested, if you want to go and create your own one, then I'll just skim through some of the code as well and see how I implement it. So right. So first of all, what is Microsoft Copilot? And Microsoft Copilot is productivity tool. It helps in your daily workflow, day-to-day workflow. It could help with like journal skills, like assistant skills, understanding, summarizing, predicting, recalling, translating. So you can all use all those assistant skills with that as well. And then the last is the knowledge. Now, the knowledge, this is where, our session based in today. So, the data is, he gets the knowledge from the Microsoft, the data which is indexed within the Microsoft Graph. So, and which is in the, there is a one API which is running behind the scene, which is Microsoft Graph API in Microsoft 365 API ecosystem. So now that's great, but now we want to extend this knowledge, so the Microsoft Graph also knows about our own custom data as well. So that part we're going to do extend for the Copilot as well. So we look into the briefly what's the Microsoft Copilot extensibility point look like. So you could see here we have we can extend in two ways. Sorry. One is we can extend via the Microsoft Graph connectors. And on this side, we have a plugins. Now, Microsoft Graph connectors is where you have a unstructured data. If you question why not plugins, why not graph connectors, I think one of the main differences, if you want to have your, let's suppose, archived knowledge base content you wanted to access via the Microsoft Copilot, and you wanted to ingest into the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, then Microsoft Graph Connector is the best option. But there is some scenario where you need a real-time information from your APIs, from your data sources, then the plugin is the way going forward. So it depends on your business scenario, which route, extensibility route you take. So but today we are looking into the Microsoft Graph Connector side of things. Now, as I said, business applications and data not compatible, within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. So it does not, Microsoft 365 does not actually understand some of your business application and data. So how can you make that understand to the Copilot? So, so this is where knowledge and custom skills comes into place. And customizing the Copilot skills, but transform your app into a plugin. This is like if you want to create a plugin, talk to your external data source, then that's the plugin is the way to go forward. And then the last one is if you want to bring your data which is already there somewhere and ingest into via the Graph connector, then it will be indexed into Microsoft Graph as well. So two ways, plugins and the Microsoft Graph connectors. As for now, as extensibility point of view, I think a few more are coming. I'll be in the Microsoft build later in the year, later on, for your announcement. But I think as for now, it's Microsoft Graph connectors, and the plugins is the extensibility point of view. So now this is the root of the Microsoft Graph connectors, and you can see the plugin as well. So we have a Microsoft Graph connector here. So you have external data. Microsoft Graph connector work as a bridge in there. So and then you give this data to Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and that's semantic index for the Copilot, and Copilot looking for data within that region. So when your user asks a question, which is to the Copilot look for your data, whatever is been indexed within Microsoft Graph under the Microsoft 365. So it will, if you have answered, if your question is related to the data which you have already ingested, it will find the data and then add its own intelligence experience and send you reply you with the information you've asked. So that is what it looks like in terms of the Microsoft Graph extensibility. And then you could see is like a one way. So data is coming from one side. So we're not writing back anything. Copilot does not have access to your external data or Microsoft. It's just simply one way traffic. Once you have ingested this one into Microsoft 365, then that's it. That's data will be there. There are some scenario where you can build, when you build a custom connectors, you can build crawl mechanisms. How often you want to refresh your data, if you want to go ahead, and you can also build some a notification mechanism as well. So you can change and update the data on demand here as well. Not everything, you can sync again, resync the whole data source again, which is probably not the best approach, which is a option, but might not be the recommended approach. So what happened once you ingested once, then you look for on your external data which item has been changed, or which product has been changed, or the new product has been created. So you look for those notifications. So you get that particular the one change data, and then you go ahead and update your ingest again via the Microsoft Graph connector. So you can build that mechanism with your external data. That is kind of recommended approach for the always have the fresh data in the semantic index. Whereas with the plugins are you're talking directly to your data, so there's no ingestion. You ask a question, Copilot Copilot decide, okay, you ask it, and you kind of you also select, okay, this is plugin I wanted to use for this particular request. So Copilot then decide based on your request, use the natural language. He predict there's a process which you decide which plugin to use. So when he decides he needs to use your plugin, and then he send a request, and your plugin go ahead and talk to your data, and then get the response directly. If real-time response from your external data. So that's to extensibility point of view I want to run through. But today we are more focused on Microsoft Graph connectors. So there are types of connectors available. There are out-of-the-box connectors available as well. Why not use out-of-the-box connectors? But out-of-the-box connectors might be there will be some point if this is your custom application or custom data source available, then you might not find the out-of-the-box connectors for that particular scenario for data. I mean, there are quite other ones available out of the box, like a ServiceNow, Salesforce, and it's really easy to configure, right? So, but again, they're for the common data sources, you can use the out-of-the-box connectors and start bringing the data if it's in Salesforce or ServiceNow. And is ready to go, so you don't have to kind of build any code or do anything. But if there is the point where you have a custom data, you as a developer and architect background, we love to have a full control on things. So then this is the custom connector you have to create. So where it give you build connector for non-standard or data sources, greater flexibility and control over data flow, required development experience or use of the Microsoft Graph Connector SDK. So there's a little bit work involved on the right side of thing with creating custom connectors, but you have a flexibility, you have a control, and when you can point to any data source, and you can transform your unstructured data into structured data, and then give this to Microsoft 365 ecosystem and ask the Copilot use that. So now what's the benefit? So it will improve the data visibility and discoverability. If you give this data, ingest this data, so Microsoft Copilot would you can go ahead and search from any of the connected experiences, either from the Copilot chat or from the Teams or wherever the Copilot is available. You can go and ask for this data. You can also ask from the search API as well, from the search experience in the SharePoint. So it's available in that aspect as well. Streamlined workflows, enhanced productivity is definitely help you, because you're asking question now in natural languages to the Copilot. So no more, you don't have to remember the exact keywords. You just ask, this is what I wanted, can you help me? Then the Copilot go and find that information for you. So it will definitely help and streamline some of the workflows. Information decision based on the comprehensive data insights. again, yes, if you have a kind of data you are ingesting, like it's about some inventory system, e-commerce, you're definitely going to go and which you can ask the Copilot to summarize this information for you, or you can ask the Copilot to kind of merge some of the data and put into the table format, or you can kind of build your decision making skills on top of your data which are already available now from your custom data source. Reduce data silos and improve collaboration. Yes, so your Microsoft 365 data and your custom data at one place, so easy to kind of find information and make decision. So there is some limitations when we go ahead and use the Microsoft Graph connectors. So you can have a number of connections per tenant, 30, I think, which is depend on the scenario. I think 30 is quite a reasonable number. Item limit per connection, so you can have a 5 million per connection. Total tenant item limit is 50 million. This can be increased. I think you have to buy some extra quota, but yeah, that's the initial connections limitations. Data limitations 4 MB per item, item size limit 4 MB, and data ingestion batch size is 5,000, and that's quite a lot, to be honest. So you can ingest quite big heavy databases into the Microsoft 365 via the Microsoft Graph SDK or Graph Connector API. Some other considerations like quota usages and throttling. So when you are ingesting this content, so keep an eye on throttling and the quota usage, and how can you build the code handle from the performance-wise side of thing as well. Now, things to keep in mind when we are looking into this one: security and compliance consideration. When you build when you bring your external data, you wanted to make sure it's who you wanted to expose, what kind of data it is. Do you want to expose this data to everybody in the organization, or do you want to add some security? You want to apply some security and compliance, some policies or some security on that data, so only certain people will have access to confidential data and the rest of the people will have everything. So you need to think about what is the model can work for your requirement. Data governance and access control, that's also important. And then performance and scalability, like how, as I was talking previously, once you have ingested once, how you want to carry on keep ingesting to keep your data fresh in Microsoft 365. How do you want to, do you want to sync? Do you want to sync this data again, the full chunk of your database again and again, or do you want to just build something where only bring the data which is either created or changed in your external source, and then go ahead and update your the data which is indexed in Microsoft 365. So yeah, so these are things from the performance scalability point of view you need to keep in mind when we are building custom connectors. Now, before we go and with Mac, we always when we are building these new and function capabilities, there's always some licensing model and licensing required. So now, the really good thing with connectors are, if you have a valid Microsoft 365 Copilot or Office 365 license, it gives you free quota. I think you get like a 500 item free with your license. So which means if you have like a 200 user or 300 user in your organization, and you can simply everybody will get 500, so you can simply multiply by how many number of users you have in your organization. So that's you will get the big chunk of data, the storage free to index your data. But if your if you still your data is quite huge and you want to go ahead, then you can go ahead and you need to purchase the additional quota to be able to support your requirement. So if you want to kind of look into the two pathways, so if you need if you use a built-in entitlements, then you will get again free quota 500 per user, and depend on your business requirement. If you need to add the purchase more quota, then you can purchase increment of 1 million items, and then the last time I checked was cost of about $1,000 per month per million items. So it depends on the kind of your business requirement. So let's go and look into now how we build the custom Microsoft Graph connectors. So what are the building blocks for that? So there are three building blocks. One is we create a connection, and within the connection we provide the connection definition. Then we register the schema. So what kind of properties we wanted to ingest from our external sources, and then we basically ingest the data based on the schema we have initialized. So 3 steps. First, we create a connection, we register the schema, and then we ingest the data based on the schema we created. So that's and when we ingest the item the item itself has further some properties, like it has metadata, what the field we have specified in the schema. So we define and put the data against them. Content, like some summary or description, or sometimes you kind of merge all the content within one single content field and add this part of this request. So ACLs, that is a access control list. As I was previously talking about the security and compliance and access, this is the guy you need to kind of keep this in your mind. If you want to, there's some of the data, some information which is confidential, then you can specify as your security groups, like only this users or this group have access to this data, none of them, or some of the items or some of the data which is suitable to view everyone. You can simply define, okay, this as ACL to set as everyone, then everybody will have access to it. So it depends on how you build ACL for your external data source. And then sub activities, user activities, when the user viewed the item or modified the items. So more we add the activities, then it's also good for the Copilot as well to understand. So we'll go into more detail in a minute. So now the Copilot, we will get with some our connected experience. So when I say connected experience, what I mean is once your data is ingested and it's ready, Copilot has access it, then as a user, where do they access this data? How do they access the data? So there are different experiences user can go and access this data and use the Copilot. There is one is they can use the Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365 app. They use normal Copilot. Then they can also go to Microsoft Search. So this data will also be available in Microsoft Search, usually SharePoint and Microsoft Search side of thing. Though you won't get like a the same experience as the Copilot, but you guys know the Microsoft Search, so it's just normally you can search with the keyword or title or whatever the information, you will try and search that. So there's no natural language is not been translating, so it has its own intelligent experiences, but yeah, it's different than the Microsoft Copilot. Then we have a Microsoft 365 apps. So, for example, you can access via Microsoft Teams. If you're working on, you can use a Copilot there. If you're working in Outlook, writing an email, you need something to check from your external data source, you can go and access from there, and the Word and all the other as well. So you have that experience in the Microsoft 365 apps as well. Then Viva platform and the Context IQ. So you will get all these experiences because your data is there now in Microsoft 365 ecosystem now, and the Copilot knows this. You will get the same experience as your normal files or emails or chats in there. Right. So best practices when we are why we need a best practices for the improved relevance. It's needed because if you build some plugin before or some other apps for the Copilot, then you would know Copilot rely heavily on some of the information we define, like a rich description, rich parameter names and their descriptions. So he can basically use that information and to go and look for the data you're looking for and give you the relevant responses to help Copilot to do answer correctly. So you need to provide the rich human readable name and description for the connection. Not just like if you say connection name is hello world, Copilot wouldn't know that. So give a proper description so that like if your API or your external source, tell about your external source. What is the external source in the description? What kind of data you're expecting? So these kind of things. So he would know that, and what's the name of the connection. So he would know and relate that information behind the scene. Then another thing you can help for the Copilot is to apply semantic labels in schema. I'll show you in a minute when we go to the code as well. So there's a 7 or 8 different semantic labels available. So when you define your schema, which is just a bunch of properties, so make sure you use those semantic labels, tag them against your own schema. So Copilot will know, okay, this is the URL, this is the this is the title, this is the last modified date in your schema. So he would know, when you're looking for information, when you're asking question in your natural language, he go and translate that for you and bring that result for you. So searchable, there's this, make sure you make the property searchable, which when you're defining your schema, which most probably you want the Copilot to search against. Then add some user activities on the items, and then include a URL to item resolver is one of the property as well. I think what it is to when you shared links from your data sources with some other user, so the next time, couple of times you do that between different users, and then it automatically knows and try to give you better experience when you're sharing between the within different users some information. Or for example, you might start typing something or about which you already shared with some other user. It can go and bring that information for you while you start typing. So it give you like a context IQ, it help within the context IQ experience. Right. So before we go into the bringing the data and showing the demo, this is I wanted to show you is the Microsoft runs on the trust. So as they said, data stay within the customer tenant. So your data is never used to train the language model. Data is filtered, sensitive information. Data access limited to permissions, which we talk about the ACLs. So you can define in permission per single item being ingested. So not the whole, even you have a control over every single item. And data is indexed within the Microsoft 365 security boundaries. So that's kind of a cool, so that we covered from that perspective. Well, today demo is about you already used, you go and access the Learn modules, Microsoft Learn modules. You search and filtered. There's a really good modules there. I sometimes go and do some trainings as well. So, but there is an API behind the scene which basically uses, which has been used to build this all the Learn modules site. So it's called Microsoft Learn Catalog API. This is publicly available. So today what I've done is I've used this publicly available API, and I thought it would be really cool to bring this into my own tenant. So this is a sample. So of course you will be using your own data source. So because this is a publicly API, so easy for me to kind of prove that the concept of bringing external data into my tenant, and then ask Copilot to add some intelligence on top of that. So this API, REST-based API, publicly available, send you JSON response. It give you information about modules, units, certifications, learning path, exams, and courses. So today, what I've done is I've ingested the modules. So I've go and grab the modules. There are, last time I did the ingestion, 3,800, around 3,800 modules on their site, Learn module site. So I've ingested all of them. So so here's a URL. Please feel free to go and try out API catalog, and then you can then go to the further filter down whether you want to get modules and units and certifications. Once you get to that URL and the page, there's a developer reference guide about this API. Go and use this one for any of your projects. So solution architecture is, if on the right side, that's my Microsoft Learn Catalog API data. I've built a couple of functions, but I've built mostly for HTTP trigger for on demand. So when I hit run my function, it go and grab the data from the Microsoft Learn Catalog API data and API, and then I'm passing this data, ingesting into Microsoft 365 via the connector API, Microsoft Graph connector. So I think it took about, when we create a connection, it's just a matter of seconds. When we create a schema, it takes about 5 minutes. But then it depends on how much your data you wanted to ingest. End of the day, it's just making a Graph API calls to ingest each item. You can convert into the batches as well. If you're very, very big, massive data, use the batches in Microsoft Graph. Just keep in mind about the batches limitation. I think it's about 5,000 items you can do in one request. So keep that in mind. So yeah, you can build quite fast ingestion system as well. So yeah, once the data will be here, then the Copilot, this is the Copilot word and Microsoft 365 boundaries. So then user can ask any question and you will get like a different experiences as well. So that's my solution. So let me show you the demo, what I'm talking about, and then we can take it from there. So if I go to, first of all, the connector. So we'll go through the code at the end, but want to show you once you have created the connector, you go to admin, Microsoft 365 admin under search and intelligence, and you go to the data source. You'll see I have created a connection, and I've created via the API call, not manually, Microsoft Learn connector, and I have ingested 3,803 items. Now, normally it's a 500, I think, limit, but I'm using some trial version, so I've got about 1 million kind of thing. So yeah, you need to keep an eye on how much data you are ingesting. This is where you can check and what is your quota, and you can add more quota as well if you want to. So, and here you can check and how many item has been indexed and what was the last sync was happened. last modified at 4 days ago, last sync time was 5 days ago. So enabled experience, Microsoft Search, so things like that. So if you can go in here, so that's one thing. So you could see your connector has been created. Then you go to customization. One thing you should do that, go to I'll come to I can go to the vertical type. So this is, you define how your result type will look like in SharePoint search. So you create this one and also kind of your result types, and then you also define how either you can use the custom layout of your result, or either you can use your custom you can use out of the box layout for your results, like a picture on the left side, there is a title and there's a description, or you can use a custom adaptive card layout. So in my example, you could see I've used adaptive card layout to custom adaptive card to make it look like different than the usual SharePoint search result layouts. So you can do that as well. In verticals, if you go, and you should go to all and manage connector. This is a compulsory one of the things that you should take this show online inline, show result inline, and take the Microsoft Learn connector in there as well. That's one of the compulsory setup to do when you want to enable the Copilot experience. So yeah, that's about it. And I already created one extra vertical for my Learn category API as well, so we can look into that. So that's about configuration. So if I go to SharePoint, so if I go, let me go to the SharePoint and go to, let's say, my custom site, and if I search for Viva connection, let me go to organization, and you can see within the all vertical, the result are coming, and with my layout, which I designed for the using the adaptive card related to Viva connection. So if I click on, and it give you like, this is your external data now. So if I go scroll down, you will also get, if you have more results. So if let's suppose, let me bring more result, everything for my Learn catalog API. And then you just want to show you, so it give you like a pagination, the same experience you get the normal search. So let me search something else. So let's say Azure functions. Or you can go to all as well, you get the Azure function. So you can click on them and then take you to the module straight away over there. So as you can see, this is external data is being ingested now, and you can navigate through there as well. There's something else in my my schema. I use the last modified date, and I applied this semantic label for last modified. So let me, and it basically added automatically within for my data set. So if I go ahead and said only show me which has been modified past month, you could see it says gone down to quite a few. And if I say past week, so there's only one within Azure function which has been modified. So it is working basically. So so it's automatically handle everything for me in over there. So that's the experience look like. From the SharePoint search. Okay, let's go back to the Copilot. So if I go to the new tab and open the Copilot. Right now, so let me, so you can see on this here, I'm in my work tab, so not in the web. So I'm not searching web. So I'm only searching what's the data within my tenant, right? So let's go and ask in natural language. Instead of us saying your function, I will probably in the Copilot ask him, so how do I develop? So I've got Azure AI solution on Azure. So if I say, let me see how I do it. Let's see what it bring back. So this is your natural, you're asking your question in natural language. There you go. So he picked up some result from my custom data source. And if you expand this one, you'd see is basically, if you expand this more, this is the external data source, and this is the reference he got this data from. So again, you can, and this is the information he provided you with that. So if I click here, it takes you back to, sorry, let me just move this to this side so I can show. Right, so yeah, you could see this data is come from external. So let's ask some, and you can ask some follow-up question as well, like what are some AI services on Azure? So it go and look for all the module which I've ingested, and it's go and try and find some information from there, and answer your question as well. Cool, that's pretty cool. So you can go and how interact with external data and ask the question you wanted to ask, and some. So let me ask some other question. Let's see. If I say right, so I'm going to ask him, tell me about procedure and functions in this PostgreSQL and show me modules which are last modified past week. So I think that's the same thing I wanted to do here, which are past week, I guess, this guy. So I want to see if he able to find this information with my natural language. Yeah, live demos are all a bit scary. Yeah, there you go. So he able to kind of find this information which was last modified. Okay. Cool. So this is quite, and I think that some of the information is I've shared with the different user to Alan in my via email. So you also bring me that information because I've shared with that. So that's pretty cool as well. So because he knows about things which I've done in Microsoft 365 Word. So that is the experience in the Copilot chat. Now let's go to the next experience. We go to Teams. So if I go to new tab and I move this to the first, so let's go to the Teams, and in Teams Copilot, how does that look like experience? So we can just ask same question. We can say, let's say I'm going to ask more general question like, how can I authenticate a request to the Microsoft Graph API? Let's see what he's bring back. So imagine if you have all this data into your system. Now you don't have to go to learn modules. You can simply ask your Copilot to help you with a certain, and there you go. So and then you can provide some authentication requests. Might be able to pull some information from. Cool. So yeah, if you have if you find some more relevant information, also build some references as well, citation. So that's the experience you get within the Teams. And I think another thing I wanted to show you with from the Outlook Outlook web. So you can go and write an email. And if I go in here, I've said I want to send an email to Alan. And then you can go and open your Copilot and ask something about your, you wanted to get some information about RAG pattern with Azure. Tell me a bit about RAG pattern with Azure AI. Let's see what it brings back. So yeah, he found some information, and now he's building the references. You could see here. So all this reference from external data, this is the URL. So yeah, you can either go visit them, or either you can grab this or the URLs. You can paste for Alan to send this information, or even you can probably copy link. So this is the link. And about the Azure AI services, etc. No, that's the one experience. There was something called Context IQ experience as well in Copilot. No, I haven't got that working, but I think there might be something else needs to plugged in, and I'll probably my blog post about that when I've got that working. Is when I press this / and ideally what happen is it gives you suggestion out of the box, same as in, I think in the Teams, you can see like you use / insert people, files and more. So if you see at the moment is allowing you to add people, files, try and different search. So there's no more files in there, meetings, because they're quite new tenants, and some emails as well. So you can go and select that information from there. Same way, what I wanted to do is basically I wanted to call my Learn API connector and find information from there. So for example, if I press this and I say Learn API, if I say Learn Azure Learn API catalog. Let's see if you bring back. No, it's not bringing today. So let me just try here. Learn catalog API. Now, so it's not coming here. So ideally, what I wanted to do is to basically call my connector and then perform same way you see the experience here in here. So I might be able to see one day my connector here as well, and I can select data for my collector as well. So that's the experience. I think might be some more information or documentation coming up in the future where we can use the context IQ more better. Yeah, briefly, you know, I'm going to show you the code. If you're interested, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to show more. So let me open up the Visual Studio. Just briefly, so you put an idea what it is involved building the Microsoft Custom Graph Connector. So close all tabs. So I'll skip through the, you know, calling the Azure function. I will just go straight into the Microsoft Graph service. That's the and there's a Learn Catalog API service. So if I go to Microsoft Graph Connect service, so if I just minimize these ones, so we can go to the one which we wanted to use. Okay. Right. So we go to, first of all, create connection. So create connection is simple API request to external connection endpoint. Pass your access token. Of course, you need to build a Azure AD app, and then if I expand the setup, and you need to provide a permissions. I think these are the two permissions for the Azure AD app. So sorry, this one. App role assignment, rewrite all, and rewrite. And then once you run this, you will create a. It will spit it out. Client ID, client secret, and tenant ID, usual stuff. So I probably might be able to show you as well after quickly what's the permission you needed for this. So if I go to Intra ID and I go to app registration and then go to the MS Learn manage API permission. So you need minimum external connection read write owned by. That's when you create a connection, and then for the item you need ingesting the item external item dot read write owned by. So you need these two permission for Microsoft Graph in order to do that. So so we were in the service. So you go and simply send a request, and what you want to send is a simple payload description. As I was talking about, I wrote write a description. What is this for, and what are you be ingesting? So your Copilot would know that instead of just writing the connector one or something. Then this is where I've shown you my result type. So this is my adaptive card. I've got this adaptive card here, asset result.json. So that's what I'm calling from here. And adding part of my request, and there's some activities, URL to item resolver, and etc. So that's some simple post request. Is a simple post request, and that's it. So once it will take a few seconds. Once it's done, then the next step is create schema. So create schema is again, you need to, this is the endpoint. So that will be passed to connection ID, which has been created, and then pass the token. And this is the schema properties I was talking about. So in my case, I needed a module summary, levels, roles, and what type of is this data. These properties are subjects, title, and I've passed. It's happened to me is my data has a title as a property, and this one of the semantic label also is title. So I've used that. Then make them as a searchable as well. Is searchable. Then icon URL is also one of the semantic labels. So I had icon URL as well by default. It doesn't have to be matching. Please bear in mind. Like in case in my data set, I had a last modified, but the semantic label, it was called last modified date time. So yeah, that's a different. So you see which semantic label can apply on which of your schema properties. That's how you look at. For example, in my case, I had a path and the semantic label was URL. So I used this path, my property. So this is how you define the schema. Once the schema is defined, just send a request to this endpoint with your connector ID. It takes about 3-4 minutes to create this. Once it has created, then I got the data from this, my function app, which is giving me, I'm calling this API to give me all the learn modules, and then create item. Item. This is where I'm ingesting the item now as a third step. So I've got the connection ID, connector ID, is a put request with the access token, and what is the payload look like. So you for each item, and that's happening for each item. Bear in mind, this is happening for each item. Okay, so you can build this request in batches, but for my one, I didn't have so much data, so I said, okay, I'll go with just ingesting one by one. And this is the ACLs. You define access type, values. You define if it's a group, you define the type of group, what type of group. You can use the your AD security group straight in here, and you basically build your ACL based on your permission model and which data. So for example, if this item which I'm ingesting, it's confidential, then you can only certain people have access, then update this ACL and this information. Then what property I'm ingesting. So the summaries, and this is the should match your schema. So should match your schema exactly. If you make a mistake in here, or you did not provide any property which is not in your schema or different property, it will fail. So make sure it should match whatever you have registered your schema. Then you pass the content as well. If there's any description or summary for each item, you can do that. And then there's some activities. When was the last modified, or who modified this item, kind of thing. So you can build some activities. Who viewed the item? These kind of things. It lets you add some activities as well. And then simple, keep adding your data into Microsoft Graph. So that's the third step. And once it's done, then you don't have to wait for 24 hours. Your item, then data is available straight away by the Copilot, and then you can go and start asking question from the Copilot. So that's all from me. If you guys have any question, I'm happy to answer that.
Excellent, Ejaz. Awesome presentation.
Cheers.
Thanks very much. Wonderfully explained, and great demo. I like the demos when they work, isn't it? Which I think,
yeah.
Any problems today, which is great. I think, especially when it comes to the development related, right?
Yeah.
No, good. Look, thanks. I think any questions from the attendees, as ever, you know what to do. Please put them in the chat. And here we'll obviously try and take a break now. Say once again, thanks to our speakers so far, Vanessa Toves and Ejaz Hussain. And for those of you who are joining now, we've had a great session around architecting M365 solutions, all data-driven. And of course, the wonderful demo around the Microsoft Copilot using custom connectors to be able to bring your data in and just harness the power of Copilot. So 2 great sessions, and last but not least, certainly we got another great session from Karl-Johan Spiik, who's from Finland, and of course, as a new speaker to M365 UK, would like to welcome you here, Karl-Johan. Good to see you there, and sessions around the handling the customer requests. As a consultant, to want to improve our productivity in every way. So we look at different tech where all kinds of requests and communications come into it. So I'm looking forward to this, the demos. But yeah, without further ado, Karl, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, my team crashed when I tried to share this PowerPoint
Okay,
online.
that's all right. Hopefully, it won't crash this time.
Yeah, I will go very shortly in the meeting, but I have to show that it's 9:15 p.m. here in Finland, and it's
very late, and I really appreciate
still
that.
Sun is shining, and towards one month, the night is getting longer and longer, even though I'm in South Finland.
That's nice. Nice to see that.
So hello, welcome to the last but not the least session. I'm talking about streamlining customer requests and improving productivity of the consultant. And I mean by consultant usually the developer or person who is doing something technical or configuring, developing work. And I'm going to tell you, is it helpful to use automation? Why should we use backlog task management? Why should we use integration? When we shouldn't do copy paste or manual stuff? And what's the meaning of DevOps? My blog is in carlex.fi. And who am I? My name is Karl-Johan Spiik. I have been coding 20 years. 17 years I have been delivering Microsoft technology projects. Past 5 or 4 years I have been doing with Power Platform. And my recent projects are with Power Automate, Power Apps, Azure AI, ChatGPT, and Copilot Studio. And even though we have so much AI, usually the project is 80% of the traditional infra for Power Platform, and then 10 to 20% of AI. But it's the cool stuff now. Because of software development and agile methods, I love this shared leadership, the modern leadership, and I have written 4 books about community-led orientation. And information, 2 of those are in English, and the newest is in translation. I work as Sulava as a senior consultant, and I think that the longer I do this work, it doesn't matter what's the title. I'm a project manager, developer, architect, consultant. I just do stuff. Today, what I'm going to tell you in the first part is more like this business side or governance side. What's the meaning of backlog, task management, how to teach customer to use the media you want to use, that it's easier for you to do your work, and why should we do it, how to get the visibility for all the tasks, and how does it save the time. And then the main part of this is actual demo of Power Automate and the integration where I handle customer request emails and send them to Azure DevOps backlog, and then notify developers with Teams, because usually developers don't want to have emails. I have this actual business case. So it is one of my customers, and they are not very advanced with task management. So basically it's like they're calling with telephone and sending emails, and they are always in a hurry. And there are 4 developers or one analyst and for developers or consultants doing the work. And when you get multiple contacts in multiple places, it's very stressful. And we still want to ensure the customer satisfaction. We want to serve them. I also want to give the developers more privacy, and I want to use technology to create governance. And I was asked there to be the project manager, scrum master, someone to handle so that everyone is more happy. And I will tell you how you can do it and use also Microsoft tools with it. Why do we use backlogs? It's for making each task visible. So if someone is calling you and you're doing something task, you can do the whole day stuff, but then you don't know, you don't have the feeling that, hey, I have been doing something. You have been busy all day and still maybe have the feeling that I haven't done anything. It's also easier to show the customer that what's going on. If you put all the tasks you get into a list, and after a day for yourself, you can see, oh, this is the list I have been doing, this task I have been doing. Also the customer, if they ask that, what have you been doing? Also, when you are getting multiple tasks, you need to prioritize them. Of course, you have to do, some task needs to be done before another. So when you get another new task, you have to always like ask the customer, okay, should I do this first or the previous tasks first? And when you work as a consultant, you do billable hours. Of course, you have to write down that what you have been doing. So instead of writing 8 hours a day something, you can just put the tasks, IDs, and titles there, and then in the backlog, the customer sees that you can always come back, see the history what you have been doing. And very great stuff is that when you have multiple tasks, multiple projects, you can put the discussion under this task. So if you have many emails, Teams chats, etc., it's all in your mind, and you have to do the combination. When you have proper tool, or not even proper, maybe even a planner, but at least have the discussions and the decisions under one task. And when you put everything right down, you don't forget the details. You give the professional, you act as a professional for the customer because you don't forget the details. And if you need to give the task to someone else, it's easy that then you have everything already there, just change the assigned to, and there's everything there. It's not like then you have to search for the emails and Teams messages and gather together and use Copilot and summarize this. It's already there. And of course you can use Copilot, but that was not the point. When everything is on its place, it saves times and nerves. What if the customer doesn't want to work like that? No, we don't use that. No. I have this thing. I will send you email. Yes, we all have that kind of customers. First of all, choose the media you want to use. Okay, when I started in the project, I was using Planner. Yeah, Planner is great now. I have been using Azure DevOps long time, and there's we don't need Azure DevOps. It's too complicated. And after being a month there, I was saying that hey guys, that I'm the only one who is using the backlog. I'm the one who's always showing it. So no one else is looking at the Planner. So I will choose that. Let's change to Azure DevOps, and so we changed. But always remember to serve the customer and answer in the media. So if they send you email, reply in the email. But if you want to have the conversation in Teams, then write the answer in Teams. If there are multiple people in the email, maybe you put the Teams channel thread link to the email, but like bit by bit, guide the customer to the media you have chosen, and always be polite, because at some point the customer starts to use the media you have chosen. It's like with the kids, just piece by piece take the correct direction, and offer solutions, that if they have some problem, give solution and in your media, then they have this positive effect. Okay, this is great, I get the answers for here. And many times be ready for explain the benefits, for example using backlogs. Repeat. Don't get irritated if the customer doesn't remember why we are using this, or why it's more efficient to use this chosen media. And don't tell that customer is wrong, because we human have this sense that if someone says that, hey, don't do this, you have to do this and this. When you make someone guilty or say don't do this, or you did this wrong, usually we stop listening. And when the actual the good part comes, where you are guiding that, hey, we should do this, that people don't listen. So if you want to tell something, forget about the first sentence that don't do this, just shut up and then go immediately to the, hey, let's do it this way. This way we can do it better, and so on. So there are small things in the communication and have great effect. And usually I have been telling that you don't have to be the best guru of developing everything. If you're systematic and polite, everyone thinks you're a professional. So it's usually the devil is in the details. So what is the visibility? Transparency. It means that all the tasks, everything that you are doing for the one customer or the one project are in one list, one backlog. So the customer sees that, hey, what we are doing. If it's a sprint or 2 weeks iteration, anyway, we can see it. Okay, there's 10 things, 4 is done, 6 to go. You can see it visually where you are. You can see the status. You don't have to use time for the meetings to go through what is the status of this task, because everyone is seeing with the one glimpse, just looking at the backlog. And I'm always showing it in the meetings with the customers. And usually I haven't done PowerPoints of project statuses because I have backlog. I'm showing that. And of course, there's possibility to create hierarchies, stories. You can have epic, which is like project. We are doing this, and this epic has features like this and this. And under there are user stories, and then they are answering to what we are doing, and then the technical tasks, which are mainly for the developers, how we are doing this. No matter in which role you are, I think you need to guide others and the customer to use the backlog. If you know that why it's better, save time, save your nerves, guide people around you, no matter the title you have. Because with this way, you don't have any hidden tasks. You don't have, like, you might have stress that, okay, today I have 7 hours of work, I have this task for 3 hours, and maybe this is 4 hours. But then there are coming another task in the mobile phone, email. These are these hidden tasks. And of course, it's stressful because you can't do the task you are planning to. When you put it in the backlog, you put the time estimate, then you can see clearly that, okay, hey, today I have 3 1-hour job. I can't do this everything. So okay, I have to move something tomorrow. And after the day, you feel great because you have achieved your goal. Using backlog saves time because you don't need to reply emails. You have already stuff in the correct place. You have the correct context already. I usually write down. I have so many projects and stuff going on that when I'm doing one task, I write down that, hey, you left at this point, do next this and this. It takes me 1 minute to write it down, but next day or next week, or after a month when I start the project, I don't have to download to my memory that what was I doing. It's clear there, the history of what I have been doing, and do this next. Just continue there. And as a team, when you are using backlogs, you have this joint habits. How do you create tasks? It's easier to delegate tasks to another, because after some time you start to understand how the other people are writing the stuff down. And of course, there's no need to copy paste, not to Copilot, not to anyone. Yeah, I will show a demo how this customer, they can send email, but I put a shared email box. Then it will create the visible task in DevOps backlog. It will add pictures, attachments to the tasks. There's a bit of AI analyzing and solution proposal. And then the developers didn't want to get email notifications, so it will notify them in the Teams group chat with adaptive card, and they then take it that I will take this for myself. I have actually woken today up at 5 o'clock, not by the clock, but it's by me, by design. And I have written this blog, so there are 5 blog posts in carlex.fi. So everything I will show here, you can go to my blog and see more details there if you want to do it by yourself. Now I'm the customer, and there was some problem. I don't know what, there's champagne all over the keyboard. I don't know if they can fix it, but this is now customer request. Usually it's something more boring, like integration crashed, or I can't see the data in my Power report. Oh, I forgot to turn this on. Yeah, it will trigger it more quickly. So now the customer sends some request, and it goes to the shared mailbox. And I should see it quite soon here. Let me refresh. So this is my demo backlog. I will go to the, yes. Now we saw that it's here. One unparented task appeared here. There's stuff. Oh, there's a solution proposal. And there's a root cause analysis. Why did it happen? But if I'm not in the backlog, how do I get the signal? Oh, I have a Teams chat message. I'm in this group chat called customer requests. I have card here. It gives me the title, who has sent it. I can have the direct link to the task or the backlog. And there are other developers, consultants here. So if I want to give a signal to other consultants that, hey, I will take care of this, I just click here. And this is not ready-made solution. This is, I have built it piece by piece, and it's not ready. So if you have good advices or think in your head that, hey, I would do it differently, maybe you're correct. In your case, it would work better, or you can fine tune it longer. So this is what you get, and I can show you how it's working. So first of all, I will have the shared mailbox receiving the email. And hey, by the way, if you have some questions, please stop me, ask me, write a comment or open your mic. I don't mind. Then I want to create a new task. And those who have been using Azure DevOps knows that when you are following the current sprint, if you create task somewhere else, it just disappears. So that's why it's very important to get the current iteration. Then I'm initializing some variables. I'm applying pictures there, create the work item at the attachments, then use AI and post it in the Teams. How did it start? So the first version of this, I just create the work item. And I think I have some examples here. Oh, okay, but first of all, it was missing the attachments and it was missing the pictures. So I had this done here. By the way, if you're ever reading emails, remember to put this setting on. If you don't put this setting on, the bytes are 0 in the attachments. And then and the other stuff is that when you're calling Azure DevOps from Power Automate, you have to have this setting to allow the requests in the Azure DevOps organization. So if it gives something strange or access denied or something, then you have to ask your admin, if you're not the admin, that they will allow the request policy. And then of course, it's much more easier that if you have the Azure DevOps backlog in the same tenant as the Power Automate, then you don't have to do this API magic with permissions and stuff. Then it just works like connectors usually do. I get the iteration path in a variable. Then I get email body, and I have this help variable email body. And the first version was I was creating the work item. This is quite straightforward. And then in the advanced options, I'm setting the iteration path. With this combination, I get tasks here as unparented. And usually it's good to get them in the top of the backlog, because then when you start your meeting or day, you looking the backlog, you always see that if there's something new. If you have there already user stories, I would suggest that, of course, you are using user stories and then dragging them to the correct user stories. If there's something new, just create new user story. Go this way. Prioritization and put it there. When you have something new in the meeting, just click here and you can write another task. And if we are now start to looking it, I will put it in the active state. But then I realized that it didn't have any attachments. So when the customer sent emails and they had, okay, I attached the Excel report, but it was not in the task. Okay, then I noticed, okay, I have to build this email attachment. First, I was looking this hash attachment. If it's true, then I was looping through the attachment. I'm parsing the JSON for the current item. Then I will send the HTTP request, which is moving the file to Azure DevOps. The binary goes there, boom. And then I get the file ID, and then I will combine the ID to the task. And then if you look, how does it look? It is one of them then you have Excel, PDF, you have them as attachments there. Please work. Oh. And then we have the situation that someone has copy pasted screenshots and they were empty there in the task description. I'm not sure if I don't think I have that kind of anywhere, but it was like empty boxes here. Now it has the pictures. So then I have to extend this once again. So before I'm creating the work item, I have to go through each of the attachment and get the attachment ID. And I'm using this temp body just because with Power Automate you can't edit the variable when you're setting the variable. So, but what does this do is it's basically taking the picture which is copy pasted embedded in the email HTML and it puts in the base 64 encoding, and then I will and replaces in the email body, and then it starts working. And with this adjustment, that when I have this kind of email body, we end up with this situation where you have pictures here. So when someone sends copy paste screenshots, etc., attach files to the email, they are all ending up in the backlog. Yeah, then we can go to this part, how to signal the developers. So this is one action, post the adaptive card. I'm waiting for a response. I don't have any stuff here later on, but we could fine tune it so that the person who clicks here, we can catch the person. We might assign it already for the person. For example, if someone clicks there, I will take this, then it puts the person name there already. Maybe put it to the active state. Everything is possible. This is just like a draft. In our case, we don't need that. This is enough for us. And there is this easier way to send these choices with Teams card, the out of the box way. But the annoying stuff is there that when you press the button, then it opens the comments section, and then you have to press submit again. With this adaptive card, it's just one click. And here you can see that I have also embedded one picture. So this is the base 64 code for this small green icon. And when I was moving this solution, creating this demo, I was thinking that, hey, we are in the era of AI, so let's put some AI there. And Power Platform, so if you want to find I have pinned it here, the AI Hub, but if you don't find it, you have to more and discover, and here you can find, yeah, there's AI Hub. And I think this might be still GDP 3.5, maybe it has been upgraded, but this is like super easy to create your custom prompts or anything. I have built solutions that you teach the model to, for example, read emails. In one demo, I made this, that it reads emails and it notices that does this email belong to human resources department, finance department, which department. So you can teach them models. You can teach it to read picture forms. Of course, if you want to do very great stuff, you have to go to Azure with the OpenAI stuff. But these are like very quick and easy. And creating these 2 custom prompts here took me like 5 to 10 minutes. Of course, I have been doing it before, but I will show you. So what I'm going to show you is that how do I get this solution proposal or the analysis. Is that I created 2 custom prompts. This is the analyze error. So, and this is very simple prompt just for the demo. If you have better, please do better prompt. But there's something that, okay, this is error message coming to customer server. Then we keep the report and then analyze, try to understand what happened. There's this custom prompt chat GDP action. When I have published it in the AI Hub, I can have it here in the drop down, and then I just give the body. I'm stripping the HTML away because there was too much characters, and mainly that's because, and this is one action only, so it's very easy. Just get the plain text. And if I want to have some extra info, remember it's something else that I don't want for some reason, put it in the variables in AI Hub. You can put them many variables. In my example, there's only one. You can have here additional context as well. And then I get reply from the chat GDP. And once again, there was no ready action. So I will call the API, adding the comment and put the analysis and the text. So here's analysis and here's the response. And when I was testing this, I was putting this, I lost my wallet. I think this was quite funny. I think it's a misunderstanding. It's an AI assistant, enable assist reporting lost items to police or provide physical assistance. So yeah, had a good laugh. And of course, in the AI Hub, you can here test your prompt as well. I can edit it here. And if I want to have new input, I can have another input text. Actually, I have to maybe add here another. So this easy is to make variables there. I don't now save because then it will crash my Power Automate because then it wants to have another parameter there. And the seeking for solution is same start but different from in the end of a step-by-step fixes. And then I just added another part there and another comment. And sometimes it crashes because there's too much text or something. So I have said here in the configuration that it will run this Teams message even if the scope of this AI stuff has failed. So when you are doing Power Automate, I think it's should recognize that if you don't have proper try catch error handling, at least use the scope and do something like this, that it doesn't matter that you're missing some comments which is suggesting something, because the main point is that the developer should get the signal that there's new task. We had that situation as well. Do we have questions about this demo? You can find my blog at karlex.fi, and you can send me email if you have any questions. Don't call me.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's great that you've provided the links to the blogs for each of these steps, which is very useful. So I appreciate that. Thanks. But no, good session, by the way, because you've covered a lot of ground in order to try and, put a solution together in which you can then kind of, at least go through all the different pieces of what we have within the M365 Power Platform stack. So certainly, I think this is one nicer way, isn't it, to streamline the efficiency of improving the productivity side of things for the request management. So brilliant stuff. So no, I appreciate that. Thank you. And look, I very late for you. So hats off to you for being here. And for all of the attendees, please fill out the feedback. As I've posted a few times, the links for different speakers, so everything helps to them. And in the meantime, to all our speakers today, big thanks for you two attendees for staying tuned for 3 hours, something I wanted to try today. So certainly let me know in the feedback if that was too long or just right, and so then I can at least adjust around that. But otherwise, we'll be back next month. I'm just finalizing the date. So we'll have M365 UK next month also. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, have a good evening. Please take care of yourselves, and see you soon. Thank you.